Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Hannah and let's talk Les Miserables. So today I actually did something I've been wanting to do for a while. I went to the area where the barricade in the book is supposed to be. So this is pretty much smack dab in the middle of the town. I'll try and put up like a Google map thing here or something so you can kind of get a visual of where it is in relation to the rest of the city. So it's right next to the Les Halles Mall, which is right around where Châtelet is. And the spot it's in doesn't really look very good. Like where the pub is supposed to be, like that bar in the book, there's nothing there. It's just an empty area that's for sale, and it's been that way for years apparently. So there's like a lot of graffiti, and you can't even see one of the street names on that side of the road. And also the street names are not the same as they are in the book. Pretty much every street name that's referenced in the book has changed to something else today. And so some of the pictures I took were of like what those street names are now. And so after this clip, I'll have what I filmed and the pictures I took to kind of show and give you more of an idea of what that looks like today. So the past 2 days I really haven't felt very well, so I'm a bit behind on my reading. So I just read one chapter today of the new book, which it was actually a really long chapter. I was kind of surprised at how long it was. And it was mainly just Jean Valjean being in his head kind of thing and lamenting about stupid shit. So this chapter is called The Treacherous Blotter, which I had no idea what the hell that meant until the end of this chapter. So pretty much we're just snapping back to like Jean Valjean and Cosette's perspective. They're now at an apartment on the Rue de l'Homme, and Cosette obviously did not want to go, so she's in like full on sulking, like I don't want to talk to you mode. And Valjean is just like in this state of ecstasy. He's just happy. He's like, this all went according to plan. No one is coming after us. We're in a place where like cars can't get to, or not cars. We're in a place where no one comes down this road. Carriages can't come down here kind of thing. So we're just very isolated and we're fine. We're safe. Everything's good kind of deal. So for the first 2 days, he's just like, yeah, we're fine. Everything's good. I'm happy again. And he still is planning to like take them to London, but he's not really like talking about those plans much or anything. But then one of the only items Cosette brought with her was this thing called a blotter, and it's what she used to write the letter to Marius. And so there's like a copy of what she wrote in this notebook, but it's backwards, and she has this on a dresser with a mirror above it, and so he sees the reflection of it in the mirror, so it appears like the correct way in the mirror. And he sees the letter that she wrote to Marius telling him where they had gone to. And this instantly puts him in this complete state of despair. And he instantly realizes this is Marius, even though he still doesn't know Marius's name. And what's funny is he actually found this out before Marius even receives the letter from Eponine. So I thought that was kind of funny. And for some reason, this makes Jean Valjean think that he doesn't matter at all and that he's just going to be completely alone, and this like erases him from existence kind of thing. It's very weird. And then he goes on to say, this is on page 974, we are almost to the 1,000-page mark. It says, "It is true that the poor aging man loved Cosette only as a father, but, as we have already said, the emptiness of his life had caused this paternal love to embrace all others. He loved Cosette as his daughter, his mother, his sister, and since he had had neither mistress nor wife, since human nature is a creditor who accepts no compromise, that kind of love, too, was mingled in with the others, confused and unrealized, pure with the purity of blindness, innocent, unconscious, and sublime, less an emotion than an instinct, and less an instinct than a bond, impalpable, indefinable, but real. The true essence of love was threaded through his immense tenderness for Cosette, like the seam of a gold hidden unsullied beneath the mountainside." And so even though it sounds a bit weird and it's worded a bit weird, this is just basically saying and showing how much Jean Valjean loves Cosette. Like, he's the only love of his life, so to speak. Unfortunately, because he hasn't experienced any of this before in his entire life, he has that jealousy. And I'm going to read another section from in here. It's on the last page of the chapter, page 976. It says, having decided in his mind that this young man was at the bottom of it all, Jean Valjean, the man who had redeemed himself, who had mastered his soul and with such painful effort resolved all life, hardship, and suffering in love, turned his inward vision upon himself, and a ghost rose before his eyes, hatred. So I feel like that's very, very ominous. And the way this chapter ends is with him asking Toussaint, you said there was fighting in the town, like where is it? And so she tells him, and he immediately goes out. And I don't know if it's to find Marius or what, because the letter that Marius sent with Gavroche hasn't been sent out. And so I don't know if Jean Valjean is going to actually intercept that letter, or if Cosette's going to get it, or what exactly is going to happen there. But right now it honestly seems like he's going out with the intention of like murdering Marius. And most of that chapter is literally just him thinking in his head, like, she's being taken away from me, this guy is the one doing it, what the hell is going on, how was I so blind? And so he's like going through in his memory, like, of all the times he noticed her being like unusually happy, or her like blushing or whatever, and he's like, it's all because of him. So he's just like wrestling with himself over this, and I feel like it's like the major flaw of Jean Valjean, because he's pretty much like perfect in every single way otherwise. And so this is like his human flaw, is his love for Cosette and his unwillingness to let her go, even though she's growing up and can't live with him forever. Like, she has to be able to live her own life, and we're now seeing the conflict of that. And I'm interested to see how like murderous Jean Valjean is. Like, if that really is something that he is thinking he needs to do to hold on to her, or if over time he's going to come to terms more with how he's feeling. But obviously we know that he will see Marius at the barricade, so I'm definitely interested in reading more and seeing how that is going to end up playing out and what the differences are. So since we are getting so close to the end of the book, I'm definitely going to start trying to go to the places that are mentioned in here and kind of show off more, like the Rue Plumet where they were, like that road name that doesn't exist, but I can still show like where that is today and what that looks like. And like the Jardin de Luxembourg, I've actually shown on here before a bit, because it's where I would go for book club meetings. But I'll probably show a more like broad view of that park, because I'm usually not in the area that most well known in association with there. And obviously at some point I'm gonna go to Victor Hugo's house. I've actually been there before. Toma took me there for my birthday one year, but that was, gosh, like at least 4 years ago, so I wouldn't mind going again anyway and just getting some footage there and be able to share with you guys what these places look like now, even though the names and obviously businesses have changed. I've come to another day and some more Les Miserables chapters. So I read 2 today, and I've kind of realized one thing that I dislike about how Victor Hugo writes out his plot lines, but I'll get into that in a second. So the first chapter I read is called A Boy at War with Street Lamps, which is 100% referring to Gavroche. But essentially, Jean Valjean is just like sitting on the steps of his apartment, just moping basically. Like, he hears the clocks chime and he's just not moving, not really doing anything besides just sitting there. And so then he sees Gavroche fucking come up and is looking at house numbers. And then this interaction happens that is just, to me, feels out of character for Gavroche, because I feel like Gavroche is very, very smart for a child and has shown his smarts multiple times in this book. So it doesn't feel like something he would do. But Jean Valjean actually calls out to him and says, "Well, youngster, what are you up to?" And he says, "What I'm after is that I'm hungry," said Gavroche crisply, and he added, "Youngster yourself." And so Valjean is just kind of like standing there, like digging in his pockets for some money or whatever, and Gavroche is just like still looking at the house numbers and stuff, trying to find the correct one. And since there's a street light lit there, he's like, no, this can't be like that, that's dangerous in these times. And so he like throws a rock and breaks the street lamp. So Jean Valjean gives him the money, and then this happens. This is page 978 to 979. It says, "You mean I can have it?" he said. "It's not just to stop me smashing lamps? Smash as many as you like." "You're all right," said Gavroche. He put the coin in one of his pockets and with a growing assurance asked, "Do you live in this street?" "Yes." "Why?" "Would you mind telling me which is number 7? "Why do you want to know?" Gavroche was brought up short, feeling that he had already said too much. He ran a hand through his hair and said cryptically, "Because." A thought occurred to Jean Valjean. Acute distress has these moments of lucidity. He asked, "Have you brought me the letter I've been waiting for?" "You?" said Gavroche. "But you're not a woman." "A letter addressed to Mademoiselle Cosette." "Cosette," muttered Gavroche. "I think that's a rummy name." "Well then, I'm to give it to her. May I have it?" "I take it you know that I've come from the barricades." "Of course," said Valjean. Gavroche fished in another pocket and got out the folded sheet of paper. He then gave a military salute. "Confidential dispatch," he said, "from the provisional government." "Let me have it," said Valjean. Gavroche held the missive above his head, and then it kind of goes on, and Jean Valjean's like, "Just fucking give it to me. Just fucking give it to me." So then Gavroche ends up handing him over the letter, and then literally just fucking goes away, like goes back to the barricade. And it's like, you really just handed it over to a stranger? Like, Jean Valjean never says who he is, and I'm pretty sure Gavroche can't read, so I don't know how he would know it's to Cosette unless Marius said her name, but I'm not positive if he did or not. And so it's just like, what the fuck just happened? I feel like Victor Hugo, in some of the plot points of this, where there should be more conflict, he kind of just skips over it or makes someone do something that feels out of character to make that situation easier and more convenient for moving the plot along. Like, it's something I've noticed a few times where I'm just like, that should not have been that easy. Like, this shouldn't have gone down this way. Or like when he was talking about the escape of Thénardier, he literally just didn't write about it at all. And it's just like, is he afraid of complicating things? Is he afraid of complicated situations? Like, that's something I've noticed, and I find that a bit annoying, but also kind of interesting, because it's like, is that just something he feels he can't write? And so the next chapter is a small one, and it's just called While Cosette and Toussaint sleep, and that's just him reading the notes. And also, how would Jean Valjean even know that a letter was coming? It just seems like such an odd thing to say. Like, he didn't know Gavroche was delivering a letter. He didn't know that Marius wrote a letter to Cosette. So, like, why would he feel like to say that? Like, I don't know. There's just weird moments like that that I'm not exactly a fan of in here. And then obviously this note is where Marius is like, "I'm gonna be dead by the time you read this," kind of thing. And so Jean Valjean is just like, "Oh, this is awesome. This is amazing. My problem is solving itself. I don't really have to deal with this anymore." But then what I thought was going to happen happens, because there had been a throwaway sentence that Toussaint had brought to the new place his National Guard uniform, and I'm like, he's so gonna wear that to go to the barricade. And that's exactly what happens. But it's a bit confusing, because Jean Valjean goes from literally being like, "There's no escape for the youth. If he is not yet dead, he will certainly die. What happiness," to literally the next paragraph having it say, "About an hour later, he left the house again, clad in the full uniform of the National Guard and fully armed. The porter had had no difficulty in finding in the neighborhood the means to complete his equipment. With a loaded musket and a pouch filled with cartridges, he set off for Les Halles," which is where I went yesterday to see where the barricade was. Because while Jean Valjean had been sitting on that porch, he heard the gunfire from the barricade, because where they are is very close, well, where Jean Valjean and Cosette are right now is very close to St. Paul, and that is only 2 metro stops away from Châtelet, which Châtelet is the area where Les Halles is. So they're quite close together, so he could hear what was happening there. So very soon we should see Jean Valjean at the barricade, which there's only 1 chapter left in this book, which is a bit of a longer chapter, but then, part 5, Jean Valjean, and that is the last part of this book. So I am very close to the last 200 pages of this, and that feels pretty amazing. Like, I'm only a few pages away from page 1000 right now, so getting closer to the end, and there's still so much that needs to happen. Like, this book is so strange, because it's been such a slow burn up to now, and now these last several hundred pages, it's like we just have to go at the speed of light, because like the entirety of what the musical and the movies cover is like in this last part here. Oh, it's gonna be so interesting to see what happens now. So tomorrow I'll read that last chapter, and then after that we're gonna get into the last part of Les Miserables. There is an Ori taking over the desks. I find it so funny that he lays like this. Look at him. Look at that gato face. Look at them teefies. Look at you. And he has like such curly fur on his belly. Look at that. You curly boy. You're so curly. What was that? You're so funny. Rainy days are back again, and this rain smells very freaking weird. Like, I grew up next to a lake, so I'm used to rain smelling like fish, but this is just odd. I love the sound of rain, though. Okay, I know I'm backlit here, but I need to read some things off my computer, so I had to film here. But I just read 2 more chapters in Les Miserables, which means I am now in part 5, Jean Valjean. So the last chapter of part 4, I 100% thought this was where Gavroche was gonna die. Like, I am honestly shocked he didn't. So this chapter is called Excess of Zeal on the Part of Gavroche, and that 100% sums up this chapter completely. He's basically just like jumping around, throwing rocks at all the lanterns still, like trying to put out all the lights, and he's singing at the top of his lungs while he's doing this. And unbeknownst to him, there's like a National Guard unit, and they're all like, what the fuck is going on out there? Eventually, Gavroche steals this cart because he's like, oh, this will be good for the barricade. It's making like a lot of noise. Like, pushing this cart is so fucking noisy. And so they're like, oh my god, there must be like a whole gang out there. And so the leader like pokes out to investigate, and this is the exchange between them. This is on page 983. So here we are, he said, authority in person. Good day to you. Gavroche was never long put out of countenance. Where are you going, rascal? Barked the sergeant. Citizen, said Gavroche, I haven't called you a bourgeois. Why should you insult me? Where are you going, clown? Monsieur, said Gavroche, yesterday you were perhaps a man of wit, but today your wits have failed you. I'm asking where you're going. How politely you talk. You know, you don't look your age. You should sell your hair at 100 francs apiece. That would net you 500 francs. Where are you going? Where are you off to? What are you doing, you young scoundrel? That's a very ugly word. Before you have another drink, you should wash your mouth out. The sergeant leveled his musket. Will you or will you not tell me where you're going? My lord general, said Gavroche, I'm on my way to fetch the doctor for my wife, who's in labor. To arms, shouted the sergeant. What the fuck? Gavroche, you are a child. You do not have a wife. I thought that was funny. Gavroche is like the highlight of this book, for sure. Everything he says and does is just completely ridiculous with no regards for his safety. Because, I mean, he's living on the street. He doesn't give a fuck. So basically, Gavroche uses this cart to, like, as a battering ram to hit this guy in the stomach. And so the shot misses him, but then that causes all the people inside to rush out with their muskets and just start firing. So I have no idea how he didn't get shot. Or, like, what made them shoot a child? Like, it's just so weird. But basically, he runs away, and from what it says, he's fine. And basically, the only thing is that he's pissed because now he's farther away from the barricade than he was, so now he has to go a long way back. But then the very last paragraph here is, Gavroche's adventure, now a part of the folklore of the Temple Quarter, is among the most terrifying memories of aged citizens of the Marais, its title being Night Attack on the Post at the Imprimerie Royale. It's like, what the fuck? So he became a legend in the end. And then, part 5, Jean Valjean. And this is where we get into something that's a little strange. I don't understand the importance of it yet. But this is Book 1, War Within Four Walls, and the title name. All right, I'm going to show you because I'm not going to be able to pronounce this correctly. I recognized immediately that it has to do with mythology. Like, I've read these words before in books, and I looked it up to make sure that what my memory was correct, and it is, but I've never actually looked up how to pronounce this, so I've always pronounced it Scylla and Charbidus, and I know that's not how you fucking pronounce them, but that's what we're gonna go with here. So they're not mentioned at all in this book, and so I'm not sure why this was named this, but then I saw, when I looked it up, that there's an idiom that says, between Scylla and Charybdis has come to mean being forced to choose between two similarly dangerous situations. And so I'm going to assume that's what it's more referring to, because, like, Scylla or Scylla, or however the fuck you pronounce it, they are a six-headed monster who lives on a rock on one side of, like, this narrow piece of water. And then the other side is Charybdis, which is a whirlpool. And if I remember correctly, I think Charybdis actually used to be a person, but that could have just been something the author added in the book I read, so don't quote me on that part. But basically, this whole chapter, which was actually pretty long, is about a different barricade 15 years into the future from where we are now, and it's just like, what? Why are we talking about this? Like, it starts out saying, the two barricades most likely to be recalled by the student of social disorder do not come within the period of this story. Both of them, each symbolic of a particular aspect of a redoubtable situation, were flung up during the insurrection of June 1848, the biggest street war in history. So then we go into this huge description about this, and so obviously since it was still June, I was getting a bit confused, where the June Rebellion, which the barricade in here is based off of, is from 1832. And that lasted 2 days. The one that's referring in this chapter is the June Days Uprising, which is from 1848. And according to Wikipedia, it says the June Days Uprising was an uprising staged by French civilians from the 22nd to the 26th of June, 1848. It was in response to plans to close the national workshops created by the Second Republic in order to provide work and a minimal source of income for the unemployed. And 10,000 people ended up either being killed or injured in this, so it was like a huge thing. But also, the description of the barricade in here, it was fucking huge. So the two barricades here, one barred the entrance to the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, and the other of Faubourg de Temple. The Saint-Antoine one was 3 stories high and 700 feet in length. Like, that is so crazy. But it said it ran across 3 streets. And pretty much how they ended up being infiltrated is that the National Guard went through, like, the houses and then came out over the roofs, like the rooftops. And so pretty much this whole chapter is just describing this and not even necessarily what happened. Like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to talk about, but it's kind of referring to, like, the mindsets, why this happened, what they used to build this barricade. And then at the very end, this is on page 992, it says, "The cowards," men said. "Why don't they show themselves? Why do they skulk in hiding?" That barricade at the Faubourg de Temple, defended by 80 men against 10,000, held out for 3 days. On the 4th day, it was captured by the device of breaking through the adjoining houses and clambering over the roofs. Not one of the 80 cowards attempted to escape. All were killed except for their leader, Barthélemy, of whom we shall have more to say. And then it goes on saying that, like, the 2 leaders of this rebellion was Corneille and Barthélemy, and they actually ended up fleeing to London, but it's so weird. This is on page 992 still. It says, "Later, a terrible thing happened in London, where both men were in hiding. Barthélemy killed Corneille. It was a duel to the death, one of those mysterious affairs of passion in which French justice sees extenuating circumstances and English justice sees only the death penalty. Barthélemy was hanged. Thanks to the somber ordering of society, that luckless man, who possessed a mind that was certainly resolute and perhaps great, by reason of material privation and moral darkness, began life in a French prison and ended it on an English scaffold. Barthélemy at all times flew one flag only, and it was black." Like, holy shit. So we've just had, like, this whole history of this uprising. Then the next chapter is called "What to Do in a Bottomless Pit Except Talk." And honestly, I thought we might have gotten more about Jean Valjean's past or something, since this whole last book is called Jean Valjean. But so far, I guess not. Like, this really felt like it came out of the blue for me, and I'm not sure if Victor Hugo is explaining it to us for us to have a better understanding of maybe, like, the thoughts and feelings of the people for this other barricade. But this one came after that one, so, like, I don't know. It's just seems like another history dump by him. And also, since it also happened in June, and I'm so bad at keeping track of the years in here, I was definitely very confused at first. So we'll see where this ends up taking us, since it seems a bit different so far. This is what happens when catnip was placed on top of my dice bag. Are you done? I have no idea what twisty shape my hair is trying to put itself in. This is just me washing it and air drying it. So Toma is actually at a Warhammer campaign right now. It is the first day of it. Thursday after work, he was able to do kind of like a practice game kind of thing. It was his first time playing with his army, and he's supposed to take some pictures to send me. So if he does remember to do that, I'll pop some up here. I have never seen a Warhammer game be played, and he's trying to convince me to get minis and paint them and play as well, but it's like, I know literally nothing about this, so I would not make that decision now. But anyway, I read 2 chapters of Les Miserables. Still no sign of Jean Valjean, but we are back to the barricade now, the current barricade. Pretty much, this is just showing what they did during those hours of the night before they were attacked again. And essentially they made the barricade stronger, they reinforced it, they made it taller, they built like a better like stairway to like climb up it. They gathered the dead, they gathered the injured, dressed the wounds of the injured, and now they're kind of like pumping each other up to get ready for the fight that is going to happen at dawn. There's just like little sentences here and there in this chapter that I really like. For example, this is on page 993. It says, Fouilly spent the 2 hours carving the words, "Long live the people," on the house facing the tavern. They were still there, carved with a nail on a beam in 1848. Which 1848 is when the other June rebellion happened. But as of right now, they are only 37 men, which is just insane to me. I definitely thought there was going to be a bit more. But as of right now, they're expecting reinforcements. And so they're just all cheery, and they're like, yeah, we beat them back once, we can do it again. And they've also haven't eaten for 16 hours. Like, they have no rations. All they have is wine, but since they have empty stomachs, Enjolras is like, you are not fucking drinking wine. Like, fuck off, kind of thing. But then this next chapter is called Light and Shadow. This is when they kind of realize the dire straits they're actually in, because Enjolras kind of like sneaks out and tries to do some reconnaissance. That's literally the word they use in this chapter. And he comes back to them hyping each other up and with like all this confidence. And this is on page 997. Enjolras returned from his cautious patrol of the surrounding darkness. He stood for a moment listening to this exuberance with arms folded and a hand pressed to his mouth. Then, cool and flushed with the glowing light of the morning, he said, "The whole Paris army is involved. A third of it is concentrated on us, besides a contingent of the Garde Nationale. I made out the shakos of the 5th Infantry of the line and the colors of the 6th. We shall be attacked within the hour. As for the populace, they were excited enough yesterday, but now they aren't stirring, with nothing to hope for. Not a single faubourg or a single regiment. They have failed us." Which I asked Homa this, because there's also like Faubourg Saint-Antoine and all of that. Like, I've kind of tried to, I know I've mentioned those names earlier in here. So I was interested, I'm like, what does this mean in this context? And he said it means like a quarter, like the arrondissements and stuff. And Googling it says it's a suburb. And so here, I'm assuming they're talking about the people of the quarter. So that's kind of the only thing I could come up with there. But then it goes on to say, the effect of these words on the gossiping groups was like that of rainfall on a swarm of bees. All were silent. There was a moment of inexpressible terror, overshadowed by the wings of death. But it swiftly passed. A voice from one of the groups cried, "All right, then we'll build the barricade up to 20 feet high, citizens, and defend it with our dead bodies. We'll show the world that if the people have deserted the Republicans have not deserted the people." The speech, releasing men from their private terror, was greeted with cheers. So even though they are severely, severely outnumbered, they still have this courage and are ready to die for what they believe in. Nowadays, you definitely would not hear sentences like that in regards to Republicans, and so the next chapter that I'll be starting next week is called 5 Fewer, 1 More. I'm not sure what that is in response to yet, but that this chapter is quite long. So we're getting closer and closer to the action. And Jean Valjean isn't there yet. I'm really shocked. So he has to show up soon, because I know he's the one that kind of like sneaks in and ganks Marius out of dying. So like, he has to get there shortly. So the past several days have been super rainy here, and this whole like next week is just supposed to be all rain. So not much is happening. But right now it's Pokemon Community Day, so I think I'm actually going to try and take a walk outside and try to catch some shinies. It doesn't seem to be raining at the moment, but we'll see what happens when I go out there. But as always, thank you for hanging out with me. It is greatly appreciated. I'm trying to combine all my words, it seems. And until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.